Hey, I'm Rabbi Michael Azos. Stay tuned for TAPED with Rabbi Doug.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight.
But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football.
Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other thing we're going to watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug.
Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. Oh, everybody talk about Doug.
Shalom and welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. It is my great pleasure to welcome to the show today someone who I've known for many years and have wanted to have on the show for many years, Israel Starck. Izzy, welcome to the show. It is a pleasure to have you with me today. What a great honor, something I've always wanted. And I want to talk to you, and I want to talk about your book, A Boy Named 68818 by Israel Starck, as told to Miriam Starck Miller, your daughter, who helped you with the book in its writing. But I know this is your story, and you wrote this 70 years after your liberation from the concentration camps in the Holocaust after World War II.
Right.
And I would love for you to tell our viewers, why did you write the book? Why do you go around telling your story? And why is it so important for everyone to know?
Well, to begin with, I would like to give a shvach v'hodua, that is a recognition. I always start now with a recognition to the Almighty Rebbeinu Shem, to God, that He still gives me the strength at my age that I can remember physically and retell something which I experienced personally, something which I witnessed with my own eyes, and I can still talk about it today. And so I have to give a shvach v'hodua for the Rebbeinu Shalom for that. Plus, also, I want to give my thanks to Rabbi Doug for giving me the opportunity to tell my story. And to begin with, I would like with a short statement of where we are at this moment. We are at this moment also, all the Orthodox Jews call this period of time Bein HaMetzorim. Bein HaMetzorim is between the calamity, so to speak, or between the destructions of temple number one in both temples. And I think that it is very important, even though these things happened thousands of years ago, and both temples were destroyed on the same day on Tisha B'Av. We also are presently in the 9 days, which is towards the end of the 3 weeks, that start usually with Shavuos B'Tammuz, which this year was, I believe, on the, I marked down, I believe it was on the 27th of June.
27th of June is Sunday.
It was Sunday, and it's going to end with the Tisha B'Av, which is going to take place this coming Sunday, and the date for this would be the 18th of July.
And that's when we're taping now during the 9 days. This is the second of the 9 days of mourning leading up to the destruction of both temples on Tisha B'Av. By the way, Tisha B'Av is a rabbinic fast, but it's not like any other fast day set down by the rabbis, because this date, Tisha B'Av, is the 9th of Av and the date that both the first temple and the second temple were destroyed on the very same date. The rabbis set this up as a 25-hour fast day, like Yom Kippur, similar to Yom Kippur, except we're allowed to use electricity. It's not like Shabbat, but all of the same fasting rules are in effect. It is the saddest day on the Jewish calendar, and it's just 7 days away from now.
Right, so according to my humble opinion, it is just the right time to talk about also Churban Europe. Just like we are remembering the destructions of temples, both of our temples were very dear to us. Temple number one, even though the second one followed hundreds of years after the first one, nevertheless we still remember, and we have set aside 3 weeks to mourn on the Churban of these temples. As far as according to my humble opinion, as I said before, I feel that just as is important that we remember these destructions of our temples in so many thousands of years ago, certainly and so much more it is important that we remember what happened about approximately 75 or 80 years ago, which I was witnessed this as a boy of 14 years. And I believe that it is a duty for us and also for whoever is listening to what I have to tell you about my witnessing of the destruction of especially of the Hungarian Jews in 1944. I think that it is very, very important for us to remember that future generations. I have been speaking so many years to different type of educational institutions. I've been speaking to non-Jewish colleges, high schools, and even elementary schools. And I've been speaking also to different types of groups because personally I remember, it's not that I remember, I'm sorry. Personally, something that I believe that is very important that future generations should be told about Urban Europe, what happened about 75 years ago, when we lost 6 million of our brothers and sisters in fathers and grandfathers in Urban Europe, in the destruction of the Jewish population of Eastern Europe, starting, of course, with Czechoslovakia. Of course, it started actually before Czechoslovakia. It started with the Crystal Night that we're all familiar with, what happened in Austria, and then so forth. But then it went on to Czechoslovakia, and from Czechoslovakia went on to Poland, which was invaded in the end of 1940, and we know the history of the slaughtering of innocent men, women, and children in that period of time, and of course with the final solution of the Hungarian Jews in after Passover in 1944.
Terrible, terrible, terrible. 6 million Jewish people. Tell me your personal experience when the war started and the invasion took place where you lived. What happened to you? What happened to your family? How did it all come about that your community was invaded and demolished?
Well, we all know the history of Second World War. Hitler decided to invade Poland at the end of 1940, approximately in November, and immediately they bombed and decimated the Jewish population, which of the larger concentrations of Jewish population, like in Warsaw and Lodz and many of the cities. They immediately started to come in. The Germans came in after they kept on occupying the majority part of Poland, especially in the bigger cities. We know what took place as far as the Western Europe is concerned. And as far as I'm concerned myself, I was born in a city called Munkács, which is part of Eastern Europe. It was under the Czechoslovakian Republic. I must say that the Czechoslovakian Republic was one of the most democratic countries in Eastern Europe at the time. And of course, we were not physically occupied by the Germans till 1944, Passover time in 1944, which is approximately maybe April or so, April or May. And at that time, even though the Germans made an agreement with the Hungarian government, with Horthy, with the Horthy Miklós, which was the king of Hungary at that time, that the Jews will be they have to come out with different decrees, different gazeres against the Jews. They started taking away our rights as far as services are concerned, rights from doctors, lawyers, and educated people, and so forth. And they took away licenses from different merchants. So that went on day after day, but the most important thing that they did not move us from our home away into ghettos. We were still going to sleep, even though many children, including myself, many times I went to sleep with hunger pains in my stomach because there was not enough food in the house. But eventually, somehow my family were able to acquire something by trading with some of the non-Jewish population at that time. So we still were able to exist. But all this ended in Passover 1944, when there was a knock on our door in the morning, the last day of Passover, after the last day of Passover. We still did not put away our Passover dishes. There was still no chametz or bread in the house, nor was there any matzahs because there was only very small amount of matzahs. Right, but nevertheless, what I'm trying to say, we were still going to sleep in our beds till this particular time, till they physically marched in. Now, your question also was, what did I hear, what did I know, what did we know? The truth is that my family, I can only speak of my family, we did not have any radio in the house. We did not, of course, there was no television or anything in existence that day. The major source of news was basically either the radio, the news flashes, and also basically sometimes you got a hold of different newspapers in different languages. My sisters used to get some of the Hungarian magazines like called the Futar, Magyar Futar, and also the Tolnai Lap, which was actually monthly magazines, and they pictured the tremendous victories of the Reich, of the German Reich, of the war. Of course, the victory started, of course, in 1939, 1940, and till of course it came to Stalingrad, but that's a separate issue. So basically, how did we find out? There are two ways. First of all, my sisters, I had two sisters. I was the only boy in the family. I was a Ben Yochad I was the only boy, and I had three sisters. Two of my older sisters, they were very friendly with our neighbor, who were non-Jews. They did have a radio. So my sisters used to go in every evening and listen to the news and bring a report of what is going on in the world, what they heard over the news. The second source of news was very important. As a little boy, I used to go every Friday. I used to go to the mikveh. It's called the mikveh. It's called the
ritual bath.
The ritual bath. So I used to find a corner, and I used to enjoy the hotter the water. The water was wonderful, and I placed myself in a corner, and I was enjoying just soaking in the hot water. And each time, my acquaintance Rabbi Moshe Schwartz came in to the mikveh, and then Feivel came into the mikveh, and Yehuda came into the mikveh, and each one brought.
They all had stories.
They all brought us different story. They all brought a report of what's going on in the world. Now, some of them were terrible. Some of them were actually what went on in Galicia, where they were slaughtering people by machine guns, near open pits and so forth, which we did not want to believe. I brought home, as a 14-year-old boy, I brought home these news flashes from Feivel and Moshe, what I heard, and my parents did not want to believe that this is possible, something this is going on. I was thinking myself, this is a terrible thing, and certainly something of this doesn't happen. So that was basically the news that I acquired and we had at that particular time.
Where did it go after that knock on your door now, when they came to your house?
Well, after that knock on the door, we were told to pack and take whatever we can carry and show up in 1 hour. Show up in the backyard of the synagogue in our neighborhood and so forth. And can you imagine when you're told you pack in 1 hour whatever you can carry? We didn't have any fancy suitcases, so my mother opened up a big bed sheet and she started throwing in articles of clothing. Certainly there was no food and so forth. And also there was no valuables that we had to throw in there. Whatever she packed, I am not aware of, but I found out later on what she packed there. because while this was taking place, my older two sisters that I mentioned before, they decided they're going to run away. So at the back of the house, which was adjacent to a forest, a green area, a lot of trees and so forth, they went out through the back window, both of my two sisters, not telling us that they are doing this. And of course, we showed up in the backyard of the shul with our bundle, my mother with her bundle, but she was very, very distraught.
Was your father alive too?
My father, of course. Yes.
So was your mother, your father, and you?
My mother, father, and me.
Uh-huh.
But not my two sisters.
Not your two sisters.
One of my sisters died before that period of time. So my two older sisters were not present, and my mother was very distraught, and she was very crying what happened to them. After about an hour from a distance, I could see them approaching, and they came in, they said, there's no place to go, there's no place to hide, there's nobody to help us. Whatever will happen to you will happen to us. And sure enough, they marched us off to about 3 kilometers away, which was a brick factory. That was the temporary ghetto. I don't know how long we were in that temporary ghetto, maybe 9 days, 10 days or so. But eventually, again, the reason they have established this, it was a brick factory, which was not in operation at that time. Why they established the temporary ghetto in this factory is because it also had a railroad connection, and freight cars were rolled in right inside the factory. So eventually, if they had to transfer us, but they knew they eventually they don't have to schlep us to some other place and load us up. So sure enough, after about, I don't know, whether 10 days or less or more, they loaded us up, telling us that we are going to go to some Hungarian farms.
Cattle cars?
Cattle cars, yeah.
Cattle cars.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, I would say 50 people would be comfortable in these cars, but they loaded up about maybe 80 to 85 members, and people who were standing couldn't sit down. People who were sitting down couldn't stand up.
And when you reached your destination, what was it?
When we reached our destination, of course, which was eventually, we realized that we are not going to Hungarian farms, that we are going towards Auschwitz. And immediately came aussteigen, everybody disembarked, and my mother motioned to me I should not disembark. This is the first miracle that I remained alive happened at that moment. And a young man who I never learned his name, he must have been in the age about maybe 20 or 21, who was in charge of the arrival of these Hungarian transports. And my mother and everybody left, including my two sisters, but we were still, my father and my mother, with the 3 people were standing in the empty freight car. She opened up the bundle and she called me over and she started putting on articles of clothing on me. And as she was putting it on, I asked her mother, why are you doing this? She said, because you have to leave everything. Do you see all these suitcases?
Took everything, you lost everything.
So maybe what you will have in your person, you will be able to keep. As she was doing this, young man comes and says, Yidana, he says, a Jewish woman, you were told that to get off. Why are you still there? He was very angry. And she says, okay, in a minute we are going to get off. And she stopped putting on the clothing on me, but then he passed by for about another minute or two. He decided he wants to make sure that we are getting off. So he mounted the freight car and came up. And he looks at my mother and says, what are you doing this? He will not be needing all this clothing. And then he looks at me and says, Ingela, little boy, how old are you? He always do. And I say, 14, I'm 14. He says, you are not 14, you're 18. And I was a little rough, rebellious little boy, and I said, if I'm 14, why should I be 18? And he looks at me and makes a point and putting his finger in my chest and says, Ingela, du fragst mich nicht kein Kasches. Here we do not ask any questions. If I tell you you're 18, now you're 18.
He was saving your life.
He saved my life. Now get off. Eventually, of course, we were lined up. My father was in front of me. Of course, men and women were separated. My father was in front of me, and the first question was, how old are you? And the next question was, kannst du arbeiten? Can you work? And they told him to a certain direction. My turn came. He asked me the same question. And on the question, how old are you? I immediately saw this young man in front of me. He says, son, I'm 18. He says, go this way, so I followed my father. Otherwise, if I would have told him 14. So that was the first moment that my life was saved. And after that, there was constantly a constant struggle. From day to day and sometimes from hour to hour, was almost walking like a tightrope, trying to survive. And this was now, once we were issued the prison clothing, after that, and so forth, we gave everything up. We didn't have any pencils, didn't have any papers, didn't have any watches, didn't have nothing. So all we had is this striped clothing, and now our whole battle for survival.
Unbelievable.
Don't go away. Taped with Rabbi Doug. We'll be right back.
Being a sole survivor is a responsibility to tell you what it means to lose everyone.
Not only were my parents killed, but also 3 of my sisters.
First my father and 16-year-old brother, and then my mother and 2 little boys, and then older sister, and then yet another younger sister.
She was 19 months old and just learning to walk, and she was murdered.
32 of my family members, most of them starved to death or gassed to death.
What haunts me is, why did I survive?
Surviving had a purpose, and the purpose was to remember.
One day we returned from work, and I see there's a lot of whispering going on. We learned that it is in Kippur night, everybody transported, I would say psychologically back, and I pictured myself standing next to my father on Kippur night, because my father was a shliach tzibur, he was representing a Baltfila, and I helped him out, and suddenly the terrible, terrible cries from every corner of the barracks could be heard. And as these cries went on, suddenly a voice came, Kol Nidrei. Somebody got up and started saying Kol Nidrei. And as he finished, somebody else got up and started saying, Hine Kachoimer, and so forth, the next capital. And as I was laying on my bunk and crying with bitter tears, remembering what Yom Kippur was like at home, I fell asleep. In the morning, I wake up in the morning, the usual time, when we have to get ready to go to work. And I turned to my friends and I said, I had a wonderful dream. I dreamed that it is Yom Kippur night and we are saying a lot of the tefillahs, we are saying Kol Nidrei. And they said, what do you mean you dreamt? I said, yes, I dreamed. They said, that was no dream. That was a reality. This is what you fell asleep in the middle of this probably, and you think that this whole thing was a dream, but it was not a dream. And I turned to them and I said, and Fritz, our lookoutster, or our capo, did not report this to the SS, and he says, nothing happened, we survived. And we did survive.
Welcome back. So, our time is running low. Tell me about liberation. After the entire, how long were you in the camp, and when did liberation happen?
I was in the camp basically over a year, and of course I have witnessed a lot of things in the camp, which from many Jews who were not very well-known rabbis, but they were all trying to perform one commandment, one mitzvah at least. Many of my friends, and some succeeded, maybe some did not succeed. And this is where I tell through my book, and also tell my friends that the important thing is that you have to have some kind of emunah. You have to have some kind of bitachon, which means believe that certainly, but maybe, just maybe, I'm going to survive. And one people who gave up, who really were realistic and said, based on what you see going on around you and behind you and in front of you, they told me, Srulek, why are you telling us to try to survive? And I said, because I am not a prophet, I'm not a Nubi, I don't know more than you do, but the point is there is a war going on, and the war maybe has come to an end, and maybe we will survive. Of course, a liberation, we transported us from one camp to the other, so the allies that were advancing couldn't.
What camp were you in next?
I started off, of course, with Auschwitz, and then the next one was Mathausen, which was a terrible camp, and then one Melk, which most of the year that I experienced was in Melk, which was in Austria, and eventually, as the Russians were approaching Melk, they transported us to a place called Ebensee, Ebensee was in the Alps, in the Austrian Alps.
And that's where you were liberated from?
That was liberated by the American Army, and at the time of liberation came suddenly, and as again, I have to say that thanks to God, I was skin and bone, but I was still able to stand up and welcome our liberators at that time.
This is an unbelievable story in a short time. Our time has run out, but I want to ask you, can I have you back on the show again to talk more about the time you spent in the camps and what life was like on a daily basis? Can we do that another time?
And God willing, why, yes, I promise you. I mean, if you call me,
I would love to.
We can discuss this particular period of time. That was the time to survive.
What was the date of liberation?
The date of liberation was exactly, in my date, if I remember, May the 6th, 1945, which was actually, in some ways, I believe this was the final day of capitulation, where the Germans signed they capitulated to the Allied troops.
Wow.
To Eisenhower.
A boy named 68818, your tattoo number, and Israel Starck, thank you so much for being on the show. We do look forward to hearing more from you, and thank you for being with us. Remember, you can check out our website, www.tvrabbi.com. I wish you many more years, bis 120 and more, in good health, and God willing, we should hear, more people should learn from you this tremendous story of faith and survival that you experienced, and may all the Holocaust survivors out there be granted long life and good health for many more years. Remember, you can check out our website, www.tvrabbi.com, where you can find other shows on the web, and if you want to email Israel Starck, the email address info@tvrabbi.com. I'll forward it to him, and I know he'll get back to you personally. Hope to see you all next time.
Thank you, Rabbi Doug. Thank you.
You are welcome. Right here on Tape with Rabbi Doug. Shalom, everyone.
Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug on the TV tonight.
This has been a Taped with Rabbi Doug production.